Greetings. Yes, I have seen it, and to keep things fair with Superman, I actually went to go watch the Fantastic Four in theaters twice. So now that I've seen it, I feel confident about expressing my feelings and my thoughts on this movie. And that being pretty good. They did a pretty good job. And I know I'm going to anger some people when I say this, but I feel like this movie was the most Stan Lee and Jack Kirby movie of all time. And why do I say that? Because this is very much the way that Stan Lee would dialogue something and the way that Jack Kirby would kind of build up the tension of it. In that you would start out with a story very much like this, where we get, the intro, them getting their powers and everything. We see that. And then we see them fighting, different supervillains, that type of thing. And then we get into the actual human angle. That was what, Stan loved back in the day. Even Jack also loved these kind of moments of us actually getting into the life of these heroes, not just, them flying off to fight the villain and then, at the end of the issue, they're back and everybody celebrates with a big party that, you beat the monster. In this, it was more so about, yeah, there are monsters to fight, but we also have monsters in amongst ourselves that we kind of battle with. And that's very much what you got here, in that there was still the human element explored in these characters, and then it all the way gets to the end where all of a sudden, yes, now Galactus is here, big, huge cosmic threat that we have to try and figure out, and you have this, different kinds of comic book science that have to come into it to try and create a portal and throw him into that and, throw him somewhere else. It's that type of thing. It's very much that. It's that Stan Lee, Jack Kirby type of formula of getting us to really focus, put that magnifying lens on the people, the actual humans of the story that just so happen to have powers. Once you really get that focus on those characters, that is what lets you then open up more into the bigger thing. And then, of course, you also have them designating this as Earth 828 in memory of Jack Kirby's birthday. So I thought that was also just a very nice little touch. I'm going to be honest up front and say that I'm still, after having seen the movie, still not the biggest fan of Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, though I will say, having seen it now, I'm a little bit more okay with it. I'm still not a big fan of it, mostly because I don't like the mustache thing. I don't think it looks good for Reed Richards. And I don't think that Pedro Pascal brings the kind of gravitas to the character that's needed, per se. But I do think he did a competent job in this movie of portraying the character he was supposed to portray. So whether or not you feel like that lives up to being Reed Richards, that's really more so on the audience. I felt it was almost there. Not great, but not bad. As for everyone else, Johnny Storm, I did enjoy him. The one thing that was kind of weird, I didn't enjoy that haircut they gave him. I don't know what was going on with that. It wasn't a good look. Other than that, he was fine. I didn't really have any complaints about that. The thing, totally fine. I know a lot of people complained about the beard thing towards the end of the movie. It didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, mostly because you don't really see it all that often. Like they don't really focus on him that much with the beard. So it's not the biggest distraction, and who knows, there's a chance that it won't be there, in the next time we see the Thing. Who knows? But we'll see. Like I said, it wasn't the biggest problem for me. And then with Sue, great job all the way around. The powers looked awesome. I was one of those people that was wondering if she was going to have one of those moments of like using her powers and all of a sudden, she pushes it too far and then, the nose starts bleeding and she passes out and that whole thing. That wasn't what happened here. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. She does have a moment. She has her moment towards the end of the movie. So that was really interesting. I did enjoy it overall. There were some scenes, everyone knows that Franklin Richards is born in the movie and he's a part of the, the overall plot. So that's one of the only complaints. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, when you're dealing with babies on a movie set, to have to integrate them into certain scenes. And that's where I will say that was one of the only things where the CGI was pretty weak in the movie, was as far as the baby. The movements didn't seem natural. They seemed very much like they were having a CGI baby do what they needed to do. So that's something that you kind of expect, and it's one of those things that even though you notice it, you kind of have to tell your brain to ignore it, because it's not like they were going to get a baby to actually do what they needed to do. Like not an actual infant toddler that doesn't understand anything wasn't going to happen. So understandable why they had to take the route they did with that. But on the other end of the whole like CGI spectrum, you have like the whole effects with Galactus and even Silver Surfer. looked awesome. I loved the way that they looked all the way throughout the movie, especially Galactus. Like, he looked incredible all the way through. Um, I know that the Silver Surfer thing was something that was a big issue to a lot of people, and this, I am so happy to say, this is one of those times when I was nervous about it going in because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I'm so happy to say they did actually make it make sense. There is a reason for why Silver Surfer in this movie was a woman. It plays into two specific characters, specifically Johnny and Sue. It plays into Johnny because he even mentions it himself. Like, Johnny loves girls. Here's a hot girl from space. That whole thing. Which was another thing. I remember before the movie came out, there was a point of contention because the guy playing Johnny had mentioned in an interview that they kind of tried to steer away from the whole, like, womanizing part of Johnny Storm. And a lot of people were upset about that because they were either assuming that they were just going to straight up make him gay, or that they were just like completely denying a part of the character that was supposed to be there. And they really didn't. They didn't overplay it. I will say, I don't think that they downplayed it, but they didn't overplay it. They definitely did make, their references to it, and it was one of those things that it was still known. There's a bit at the beginning where they're recording before their first flight when they end up getting their powers, where Sue looks into the camera and she says, "Ladies, this is my brother Johnny, and he is very much single." And he doesn't say anything. He just kind of like, confusedly looks up at the camera, and then it cuts to the next part. And then Silver Surfer's connection also made sense with Sue because of, the whole motherhood angle. They also kind of work that in there, which is where they do kind of leave an opening, because they did show where Shalabal, where she came from Zenn-La, and they showed her as a mother, as a mother to it, but there's no mention as to who's the dad, where's the dad, what happened to the dad. They did mention, that's very explicitly stated in there, that the reason she's the Silver Surfer was to save her planet, so there is that very real possibility that Norrin is there, that he does exist. They just didn't show him. So how that may possibly end up, but like I said, the whole crux of this being that the Silver Surfer thing, that angle really did, like, there was a story reason for why they chose that particular, and it didn't hurt the movie. Would some people have preferred to see the male version? Of course, plenty of people would have preferred. I myself, I would have loved to see, the regular male version. Well, he's not. She's not a different version. She's a different character. But I would have loved to see, like, the regular Silver Surfer on there. Of course, I would have loved to see that. But I had no issue seeing this because I had a feeling there was going to be some sort of story reason for why they had, Shia LaBeouf be the Silver Surfer instead. And they did. There was a story reason, and it ended up working itself into the story in more than one way. So I found that to be redeeming in some ways. Not so much redeeming. It wasn't that they were destroying anything. It was just one of those things that I was hoping that there would be a reason for it, just because when people are upset about something, I get it. But that's why I say maybe wait and watch it to see if there's a reason. If there had been no reason, I still wouldn't have minded that they had in there, but I would have agreed more with people that they should have just done the male one. Them doing it this way, and it's not that you can't argue that, the reasoning and well, I mean, as far as the Johnny part goes, that wouldn't have worked with the male Silver Surfer, but the other part still could have worked. The whole parenthood type of thing, that could still play into, like, strong themes here with it still being like a male. The only thing was, also having Johnny's connection. It really did serve more so to have the entire team be kind of invested in this because it was Shia LaBeouf. So I found that interesting. I found that it did work. I did enjoy seeing that. The only thing I will say, there were, with the whole Galactus thing, I will say I felt like the stakes could have been a little bit higher, because in that scene, it really was just Galactus. There was nothing else. He didn't send out, you know what I mean? It wasn't like the Shatari invasion of Earth, like where there are all these, like, drones and different, soldier aliens, like, fighting with people in the streets. It wasn't anything like that. It was literally just Galactus, and then they just had to deal with Galactus, which, I mean, in a way works, but like I said, it kind of felt like there was nothing else for them to worry about. You know what I mean? It was literally just the big guy. Just get rid of the big guy and you're done. That's the only part where, maybe he sent out, like, some sort of, like, sentry drones or something to start, like, breaking down the planet, or to start, like, drilling into the planet so that way he can start, like, extracting whatever he needs. Something like that. I feel like that might have helped to elevate the stakes just a little bit more. Because yes, we're facing Earth is going to be destroyed. So you can't really get that much higher than that unless you threaten the entire universe. but still, like you could have done a little bit more. So that's one of the only other things that I would have liked to see differently. Um, and yeah, I think overall the movie, it did a good job. Aesthetically, it was great. I loved it. You know, like I said, the only like weak part on the CGI for me was that part, with the baby. But other than that, I felt like, just from a design standpoint, costumes and everything, I will say I still don't understand what are all those little like, rivet things on the Fantastic Four's costume. At first I thought that they were actually part of like, what, connected parts of the costume together. But now they just seem to be on there just it's not even really stylish because they don't really add anything. So they're just kind of there. So that was the only thing that I'm still wondering, what was the point of those? I'm sure we'll never get an explanation. It's just every time I looked at them, I would look on the costume and I would think to myself, why did they put those on there? What was the point? Who thought that helped enhance the look? I don't know. But it was what it is. And I am hoping that they kind of keep this going, but you never really know. Sometimes you get a really good first movie and then you never really get anything after that. I will say this is also just like Superman. This is one of those movies that I hope they put out the extended director's cut, like with everything in it, the longer version, because there's parts, with John Malkovich that they cut out. There's a whole other section with the Mole Man that they cut out of there. There are more parts to this movie that we have not seen. And granted, I like the finished product that we got, but I would, just out of curiosity, I would love to see the entire thing, like everything that they had envisioned originally that they didn't think people would actually sit through in theaters. Yeah, I'd like to see that just because I want to see it. Same thing with the Superman movie. I want to see the longer version just because I want to see it. So I think that's the biggest thing that you can take away here, is that if you watch a movie and you want to see it again and you want to see more of it and you want to see sequels, then that's probably a good thing. They don't have to do any of that. They don't have to make sequels for everything, but it's cool when you can see a movie and actually want that from it. So I'm looking forward to that on both ends, both DC and Marvel. I wasn't sure it was going to be that way, but it actually did work out that way. I'm glad about that. I want to see more superhero movies. That's my thing. I'm always going to love superheroes, so I'm always going to want to see, if not superhero movies, and superhero shows. If not superhero shows, then I'm still going to have comics, hopefully, no matter what. And I'm always going to be fine with that. But, having the TV and the movies on top, that's just like icing on the cake. So I really do hope they continue a kind of like a mark of quality. I think that there is also some realism entering the studios now, and that has been stated several times from both sides that, yeah, the whole $1 billion blockbuster thing, that's not the reality anymore. We're not talking about putting out one of these superhero movies and making over half a billion dollars. That's not the landscape anymore. Now what you have to do is actually focus on good storytelling that will get people, because then there is a pre-built audience, but you have to actually make the stories good. I know that there are still going to be people telling me, but the stories aren't good. This story wasn't good. It sucked for this and that reason. That's fine. If that's your opinion, that's totally fine. I'm never going to sit here and tell people they have to like something just because I liked it. I don't need that. I don't need anybody to agree with me. It doesn't help me enjoy something more because other people I know like it. You know what I mean? But yes, feel free to share your thoughts with me down below in the comment section. And if you're done here, I think you should probably go and read a book. Hell, go and read a Fantastic Four comic if you want. But if you're not, then I'll see you on the next video.